You guys had I guess, a committee hearing. You were talking about concerns from several superintendents who say that this procedure of sending youngsters home for 14 days when they've been in close contact with a COVID patient may be doing more harm than good. Can you explain?
Oh, definitely. Let me give you an example. We had several, I think there were 5 superintendents come there, and you got to give them a whole lot of credit for showing up because, they are being scrutinized when they show up there from all the higher ups. So I give them great credit for coming up there and letting us know what's going on. But for one example, in one school district in this state, 2,601 students were quarantined. Out of that number, out of 2,601, there were 63 positives. So look at all those students that were sent home, largely unable to participate in class. Some of them don't have access to a good Wi-Fi or internet. So we've quarantined all those. We've basically mortgaged their futures so that a few of us that, of course, are infirm or elderly or obese, so we can be protected. And I just think mortgaging their future like that is just a very scary proposition.
But the other side of that coin is, and you and I both know, but you're protecting everyone by quarantining the many. What was the case against that specifically that some of those superintendents made?
Well, the same thing is basically that these kids are not getting the instruction at all for some of them, like you just mentioned, 45 days for some. And that's basically 2 months of school when in already some very precarious situation, with rough examples of poor instruction or no instruction or whatnot. And we already know that there's increased mortality for people with lower education. So by withholding the education from these kids, we're withholding the chance of them maybe excelling and going to college or a trade school or something. And then their mortalities increase, so they'll die at an earlier age. That's what the statistics tell us. But that's why we fight for higher education.
Mr. Raymond, honestly, what chance do you, in the face of the medical, cultural zeitgeist that we're living in right now, what chances do those superintendents have of changing a thing?
Good grief. I sure hope there's some, but I can definitely see how people would be reticent to think that anything good is going to come out of that. But it's just ridiculous to hear these kind of statistics and just keep going that way. I mean, look at this. We have flu, rotavirus, you name it, every year where kids get sick, they get over it. I mean, it really goes through a school in a number of weeks generally. They get better. Kids have a 99.998% chance of being absolutely fine from coronavirus. And to keep them from being educated on that chance that someone else outside of their circle or, a family member would get sick is just ridiculous. What we really need to do is protect those most vulnerable and let these kids get an education.
But, Raymond Crews, if that's your mama teaching in that classroom, or that's your grandmama serving them in the cafeteria, and those kids who are asymptomatic pass that on to your grandmother who dies, you have to think about that, correct?
Robin, there's a 1 in 103. Aaron, there's a 1 out of 103 chance that you're going to die in a car wreck in your life. It's almost 1% chance you're going to die in a car wreck. Living is a risk. But to hear these continual stories of people that want to see their children, their grandchildren, whatever, and prohibited so because of these restrictions, you're taking the life out of living. And I just think we've got to be more responsible at that. Why is this response so different from every other one we've had in our lifetimes?
Mr. Raymond, you said something. I want to go back to something you said at the beginning of our conversation. And you talked about the 5 school superintendents from around the state coming in, and you said because they came in, you said, paraphrasing a little bit, they're very brave to have done that. They are being scrutinized. Who is scrutinizing them, and by speaking their mind, what price might they pay?
Well, let's just start at the top. Who's running the state? I mean, the governor's running it, right? Have you seen the last time he consulted with us on what he's going to do about coronavirus? Me either, and I'm in the legislature. He doesn't talk to us at all about this. He just does what he does. And the fact that we're still acting complacent and thinking that's okay is ridiculous. Whether or not you agree with his coronavirus restrictions, you've got to agree that it's not meant for the governor to rule the state. That's not the way it's supposed to do. He's supposed to administer things based on the laws that are created, and he's ruling the state. So from him on down, you think about Bessie and everybody else, these are officials that are under his scrutiny, more or less, even though they may be elected separately. And, I mean, that pressure rolls down. We know that. We know what kind of effect he can have on all kinds of different aspects of the state. So that administration is causing pressure on them, and I think it's very brave of them to step out there and say, listen, here's the impact on the students. They didn't call anybody out. They said, here is the effect on the students. They're not coming to school. They're not getting the education they need. I mean, Robert and Aaron both, think about this. Those kids that can't go back to school that are in well-to-do families, what's happening there? Well, there's probably a parent that's able to stay home and help them out or tutor them or get them special help online or whatever. So the people most impacted by this are the ones least able to deal with it economically. I mean, it's ridiculous. We're hurting the people we most need to help.